Hello, welcome to The Route to Success. Today, we are going to address something a little bit more serious, but very close to home, and one that I think our guests would agree is something that as business owners and entrepreneurs, we need to be very aware about. Today, we're joined by Tosha Connors. She's CEO of My Sister's House, which serves survivors of domestic violence across Charleston, Berkeley, and Dorchester counties in South Carolina. And we're going to talk about why this issue is so hard to discuss, what leaving really looks like, and the practical ways every one of us can help at home, at work, and in our communities. Thank you for joining us today, Tosha.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So, are you ready to jump in?
I'm ready.
Okay, let's start with your story. What led you to this work, and what does My Sister's House do day to day for survivors in what South Carolinians? Is it South Carolinians? Is that right?
South
Who live in
Carolinians.
Carolinians, okay,
Mhm.
called the Low Country.
Mhm. Yeah, so my why, I've been in the nonprofit field for over 20 years. That was just initially spurred by my mother and grandmother, who were some of the most giving individuals I've ever had the privilege to be around. And I knew that in my work, it really, for me personally, is about being an instrument of God's love and wanting that to show up in my work as well. So that led me to the nonprofit space. Had several different iterations in this nonprofit life, but now being here at My Sister's House and being drawn to domestic violence, I'm a native South Carolinian. I was appalled when I actually started to read the reports and the statistics around domestic violence in South Carolina. And I think it also hit close to home because I have several really close family and friends who have been victims of domestic violence, and it was never really talked about in those terms. So once I started reading the reports, especially once I got to My Sister's House, understanding what it looks like in our community, understanding the impacts of generational trauma and how people really get swept up into this, and how it can become so normalized, which, before working here, I would never have thought that that was possible. Um, but now seeing it from the other side, violence really can become normalized in a community, in a household, and you can see that play out. So that's my why. That's how I got here. That's why I stay here, and I stay because of the staff and our clients. There's always the lingering hope that you're going to be able to help that one person. And we have the most incredible team at My Sister's House. They do such hard, visceral work every single day. And I just keep thinking, if they can do this work, so can I. I can be here to support them.
So, Tasha, just building off of what you said, I would like to say, given my 20 years of experience working in the nonprofit world, one of the hardest lessons for me to learn, which you said, is that poverty, violence, abuse are normalized and they're things we overlook. And one of the things that I saw that I think you might be able to relate to is the lack of awareness and knowing what to do, and people not knowing how to access the system and use the system. And so I know you're planning to give us tools today, and I'm eternally grateful for that and for the tools you're going to give us. But I will say, folks, that was me in Oklahoma. This is Tasha in South Carolina. I'd be willing to place money on the fact that this is in every community, and that your average person probably doesn't know how to access services, who to call, or what to do. And so Tasha has been gracious enough to give me her time to address these questions, from an expert, because it has been a minute since I've worked in this world. So, naming the discomfort. You said domestic violence makes people uneasy to confront. How do you open honest, and I think this is the word we're going to stress here, compassionate conversations in different settings, rural, faith, and affluent communities, so that people truly hear the message?
Yeah, that is a great question. Number one is know your audience and who needs to be the bearer of that message. So if we're going into the faith community, who among our team has the personal experience, is a person of faith, maybe feels comfortable in that space, can relate to those folks. So it's about knowing who's going to be the best messenger based on who our audience is. That's number one. We remain truthful and, I'd say direct with all of the information. It is hard, it is uncomfortable, but we have to talk about it head on. We have to be truthful and we have to show that there's no shame in talking about the issues. So when we can exhibit that we're confident and comfortable talking about the subject matter, it allows other people to let go of that shame and that stigma. We talk a lot about being trauma informed, meeting people where they are. We don't want to re traumatize somebody. So it's also not pushing the person to share their story if they're not comfortable. We're not trying to solicit. Responses or testimonies from people, but we can share experiences from our own clients still in a very confidential nature because we're not sharing our clients' names, any identifying information. But when we are able to highlight what a story looks like, other people can see themselves and their experiences reflected in that story. And then we give them the space to come up to us. I would say very frequently. I have been at like my own doctor's offices, and I just tell people I work at my sister's house. There's such name cachet and trust that's built up with our name. People know that we're going to be confidential. People know that we're not going to approach them with judgment, and they will just share. They will share the message. They will share their stories because at the center, people want to connect. And I would say this is a really big divider with abuse. We know that abuse is about power and control, and they're trying to separate you. People want to connect. We want relationships. We were built for relationships. And so when we're able to give people that space to build those connections and those relationships, I feel like it happens very naturally, very fluidly. But the training, the education aspect, going into different communities. It's about utilizing our volunteers, utilizing our staff, and our board members. So we want to educate people to be advocates for the mission, to talk about the subject matter, and to go out there with compassion and confidence to break the stigma because honestly, that is the only way that we're going to change anything when we look at what our mission is. And when you look at the mission of a lot of domestic violence agencies, it's to break the cycle of domestic violence or disrupt the cycle. Again, at the heart of it is that community and that culture. We have to change the culture of silence that exists. We have to talk about it, which means we need people to be very strong advocates to stand up and say something even when it does feel uncomfortable.
And I think you hit on so many key notes here is removing the shame and stigma, removing the silence, and understanding that it's okay to have difficult conversations.
Mhm.
I think we need to understand that and give each other permission. A question that I have heard in my career, and actually something my daughter and I have had to talk about because of experiences with her friends, is the question, why don't they just leave? And for people who don't see the full picture, can you walk us through why leaving is dangerous, complex, including financial abuse and safety risks, and what safer steps look like?
Certainly. Uh, a myriad of barriers that prevent somebody from leaving. So um, I'll just I'll give an example of one of our previous clients. Um, Leaving her abuser, she was able to get an order of protection, which is similar to a restraining order, but going through family court. The abuser ordered to leave the house. Okay, well, this is good news. Now she's in the household with her young child. That abuser was paying half of the mortgage. Now she has to figure out how am I going to make this payment every month without his money coming in. So that's number one. If you have a job, or maybe you haven't had a job in a while, maybe you're a stay at home mom, you need to get back in the workforce. It is very difficult in a short amount of time to save up money. If you're working a job that pays you, say, even $20 an hour, which, sorry to say, is a pretty good rate for a lot of folks, um, that is not going to get you the minimum amount of money that you need to be able to live. So, here in Charleston County, based on HUD guidelines that came out, we know that you need a minimum of $57,000 a year to survive. We're not talking about live a great life, but to survive. And when the average cost of rent is $2,000 a month, that is not sustainable. So, when you are on your own, you have children to take care of, you have daycare to pay, you have transportation issues. We live in an area where we don't have great public transportation. We have buses and that's it. So, depending which part of town you live in, or if you're in a very rural part of town, you may not have transportation to get downtown to work because you were relying on your abuser for that. So, there are all of these instances. Once you remove that person from the situation, financially, it's very difficult to maintain that independence. It could also be that that abuser is helping to watch the child, care for that child. Maybe you weren't paying for daycare or after school. What does it look like when I'm relying on the abuser's, the mother, my mother in law, to watch the child, but now I need to separate? So there are all of these issues that come into play around the financial abuse. Say that you're married, they have access to your social security number, they can ruin your credit. They get a lot of credit cards in your name. If you have evictions, if you have poor credit, it's going to be almost impossible for you to rent your own place. So you start to see that all of these challenges pop up that you weren't thinking of before, challenges that maybe you didn't have before. Aside from the financial, you have the housing, you have the legal barriers, whether you need to get a divorce. Here in South Carolina, we still have the law in place that you have to be separated for a year before they're going to grant a divorce. Makes no sense, particularly for those folks who cannot afford to be separate. I can't afford my own place for a whole year. There are plenty of people who are living with their spouse, their abusers, for that year because they have no other option. They have no other option. So even if you're seeking legal remedies, there might be these things in place that you're trying to abide by. And you're like, I need to get out of this marriage. I need to get out, or I don't have the financial means to get an attorney to go through this long custody battle. So those things really prohibit somebody. I think one of the most overlooked barriers, they love that person. They
Mhm.
love them. I just want this person to stop hurting me. So I often say when I was dating my husband, if we had gone on our first date and he hit me, well, we wouldn't be together, right? Um, at some point with all of these relationships, there was something good at the beginning. And sometimes that good thing was a few days, a few months, a few years. But we know when we look at that cycle of violence, there's always that honeymoon period. And then you're going to have the tension, the explosion. You're going to reconcile. That person's going to apologize. And then you're going to go back in that, like, it's good phase. People want it to be good again. So there's this hope. Oh, maybe I can change him. He had a really terrible childhood. I just need to do these things, or this person just needs to stop drinking or using drugs, or whatever the case may be. These can be compounding factors, but we know at the heart of it, it really is about the power and control. And that person needing to seek some sort of like batterer's intervention program. But those people, those victims, those survivors, like they want it to be good again. So there are a lot of folks who they stay and they hold out hope. Another one, pets. So pets can often get overlooked. We have so many people, they refuse to leave their home without their pet. Why? Because that pet is the only thing that's giving them unconditional love and care. They can care for this dog or this cat. We had a client who was in love with her iguana. She was not leaving unless she had this iguana with her. We found a way to make it happen. But when you have that like one other little being that you care for, and maybe that abuser is threatening that pet, harming that pet, you're not leaving. And so those types of things I think people often overlook. And you've just been physically and emotionally beaten down. So we know that on average, it takes somebody 7 to 10 times before they leave for good. It's a process, right? So going back to that example, if you were slapped the first time you're on a date, well, you're going to leave, right? Like it's a process how people get into these relationships. It is a process to get out. If it were that easy to leave, oh, this is happening, I'm just going to up and go. Well, people would do it and we would be out of a job, right? We wouldn't have people coming back to us 3 or 4 times in 1 year. We wouldn't have the kind of rates that we do across the country. It is not easy to leave. Cultural things that make it very difficult. Sometimes it's the faith community, um, depending on where you are. And we're in the deep South. We're in South Carolina, and we are very fortunate to have some incredible relationships with faith communities, churches, mosques, things of that nature. And then there are other ones where it's really difficult if you're in a more rural area. They think that you promote divorce. We don't have that going on in our congregation. We promote healthy relationships. We believe that everybody deserves to live a life free of violence. So sometimes it's, the culture, your family makeup, or like I said, even that generational trauma that's existed. You saw your mother or your auntie get hit. This is what happens. This is how relationships work. This is how, husbands treat their wives. I have heard that so many times. And I've had abusers say that to me. They're looking for their spouse and I won't tell them where they are. And I've been told, well, I'm just getting a little mouthy. Like, doesn't my husband slap me around? Because it's so normalized. And I'm thinking, oh dear God, I can't believe he just, well, I can believe it because
Mhm.
it's what he thinks he's allowed to do. This is what he thinks is appropriate. And there have not been enough people, enough repercussions, enough consequences, whatever, to say this is not appropriate. There are consequences. This isn't allowed. So that whole culture really can just continue to make the issue so pervasive, and that's what we see here.
What comes to mind is that phrase that people so often use, boys will be boys.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish that phrase would just go away
Yeah,
because we have to perpetuate kindness and hope.
yeah.
Okay, turning the conversation a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
What are 5 ways to help today? What are 5 concrete things a caring neighbor can do right now? Can they learn warning signs, start a conversation, obviously donate, volunteer, advocate? Do you have trainings for people outside of the community you serve? What are the ways that people can help right now?
Mm. Great question. One, I think watching this podcast, being aware of what's happening. In every state, there's a state coalition that exists. So you're able to find your domestic violence, your sexual assault center in your state. Know what the resources are. You don't have to be the expert in all of the things. You just have to know where the resources are or where to direct somebody. So I'd say that one, be informed and know the resources. uh, Secondly, I would say advocate with your legislators, whether it's state legislators or your county. Go and talk to them. Send emails. The whole like the squeaky wheel gets the oil. I think
So
it is
true.
so underutilized. Just reaching out, calling, because those are the people that the legislators are listening to. These people keep calling the office. This is important. They don't know unless you tell them. So I'd say advocate in that way. Be aware of what's happening around you. Be aware. So often, folks just have their blinders on. I don't know. I don't want to know. I don't want to get involved. It's not my place. We're part of the community. Be part of the community and be aware of what's happening. That means know your neighbors. Who lives next door to
Mhm.
you? Have you
Mhm.
seen their children in a while? Have you seen, again, you don't have, it's not about being nosy, but it's about knowing your surroundings, being part of the community, who is around you and what's happening. It's so important. It is so important. I really keep harkening back to this idea of community because I think it really is the only way that anything is going to change is if we strengthen our communities, and it has to be a granular response. Um, Ask the question, are you okay? It is so simple. Uh, it could be somebody that you're sitting next to at church. It could be somebody that you go to school with, somebody that you work with, or maybe you're standing in line at the grocery store and you witness something that didn't feel totally right back in the cereal aisle, and now you see this person in front of you. Just a simple like, "Are you okay?
Mhm.
Can I support you?" I ask that frequently with folks that like, "How can I support you?
Yes.
You tell me. What do you need from me? I don't want to assume that I know what's best for you, but how can I support you?" So asking the questions, they're key. And then I'd say, the final thing in whether it's your workplace or you're part of a civic group, ask for the training. There are so many organizations that will come out and they will have lunch and learns. They will have discussions. They will have one-on-ones. Uh, I say frequently, like where my kids go to school, I'm not always the most popular mom, like on the playground, when oh, what do you do? And I work for a domestic violence agency. Ooh, it makes people feel uncomfortable, right? Um, but when people want to talk to me about it, when they're interested, they're like, oh gosh, tell me more. And I start
Mhm.
telling them, and they're genuinely curious. Oh, can you come to our law firm and talk? Can you come to this manufacturing plant? Just let people know. We love to get out there and share about the statistics, the success stories, how people are like moving on in their lives. It's really important to give a voice to survivors. And I think when people invite that in, when they're just genuinely curious and they want to learn, that's one of the greatest gifts. So find a local organization, or, go to our website and reach out to us. We love participating in webinars, speeches, and we have a really great team. So invite people in.
I think the things that you said that are so key here are be open to listening, have a growth mindset. Don't be afraid to ask the question. And what I kept getting from you is education is power. And I
Mm,
don't mean s- school education, I mean education about your community and being a community. When I worked with high risk kids, I would tell people all the time, and you'll understand. I'd say if you are retired or if you're at home when the children are let off the bus, go stand on your front porch.
mm,
The bullying will stop. Watch those kiddos just get into their house safely and close the door. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to talk. You can sweep your front porch if you feel awkward, but just be present. You'd be shocked how kids would love that.
yes. Oh, I think that is a really great suggestion for folks. Yeah, and especially having, like, young kids myself and knowing, like, what's happening, how those things sort of manifest in one place, one location, and then carry on somewhere else. Yeah, that presence, can speak
Mhm.
volumes.
Oh, yeah. All right. Let's say that you have a friend or coworker.
Mhm.
If someone confides in you, what is the thing you should say first? What should you avoid? And how do you respect their choices and confidentiality while helping them make a safety plan?
Mhm. Um, One, when somebody feels comfortable enough to share with me, first, I thank them for sharing. It's really difficult to tell somebody that you're going through something that traumatic. So I thank them. I ask them if they're like, are you currently safe? Is there some way that I can support you in this moment? Um, do you want resources to a shelter or to a domestic violence agency? So really, again, it's about trying to give them the power because their abuser has stripped all of their power. Their abuser has stripped their decision making abilities. And sometimes they may not know, and that's okay. Like, it can be really overwhelming. I don't know, like, do I need a lawyer? Do I need shelter? Do I need food? I'm not sure because my brain is trying to process this trauma and I'm not sure what I need. That's also very real. Um, Just remember to not judge them once you find out what the situation is. And you're like, don't say like, oh my God, I can't believe you haven't left yet. What are you doing? Oh, why did you let him do that? Why didn't you tell me sooner? Right? We're not blaming the person because it is not their fault. Um, and we have to recognize that they're in survival mode.
Very much so.
They are in survival mode. So maybe take a minute, take a breath, an extra breath before you respond and think about what you're saying. I know for me personally, sometimes it's my facial expressions. They don't always mirror what I'm thinking in my head, or sometimes they mirror it too much. So I have to be really mindful. I think it's also about knowing yourself. What does it look like when you're responding to somebody? Do you know that something's happening with your face and you have to be a little bit more mindful? But I thank the person for sharing. I ask them what it is that they think they need. Depending on how well I know the person, there are times I just give them a hug. Um, Sometimes they don't need a response. Sometimes they just need to share, right? Like I just need to tell somebody. They're not always looking for you to solve the problem.
So true.
That, I'll say that's even difficult as professionals, right? Like we want to help you. We want to solve this problem. We don't want you to be in this situation. Um, I think it's very natural for, those of us who are in this field are just good people, right? Like I want to help you. They're not always looking for you to solve the problem. So I think sometimes it's just recognizing they just need to tell somebody because that first disclosure can be a milestone for them.
Mhm.
Um, I really suggest participating in support groups. So, at my sister's house, we have individual therapy and we have support groups. Even therapy can be really overwhelming to individuals. Um, I don't know this person. I'm not sure I want to tell them. If you participate, like at least in one of our support groups, they're virtual. You don't have to participate. Sometimes you're just listening, right? And your experience is affirmed by other folks in the group. I think it's a really great entry point. So depending on the level of trauma that somebody's experienced, if they've participated in therapy before, things of that nature, I will always suggest why don't you just try one of the support groups? You don't have to participate, just listen, right? Like if that's something that you're open to. So I think a lot of it is listening. There's a lot of emotional intelligence that's happening, right? Like how well do I know this person? How far am I pushing? But again, if you know the resources, you know what's in your area. Um, Maybe you're going so far as to safety plan with them, or you're directing them to the National DV hotline or to your local agency where we can safety plan more fully. If they're not ready to leave yet, but they need to think about things and they're in a place. So oftentimes I will ask clients who were in crisis. Maybe somebody's upset, they're crying, they have a question, and I'll say, okay, I'm willing to like discuss this with you. Can you hear this right now? Or do we need a few minutes? Like, do you want to talk about this later? Because again, everybody's processing their trauma differently. They're going to respond differently. They may not be in a place. Okay, let's talk about all of the resources now. So I ask them if they're ready to hear this, if they're ready to discuss this next part, or do we need some time? Do we need to come back together? So I think those are some really clear steps that people could think about taking.
Good. Well, good. It is so key just to listen. I always tell people sometimes the greatest gift you can give anybody is to see them and to hear them,
Mm-hmm.
and that gives people courage to be seen and heard.
Yeah.
Um, so I shared with you before we started recording about a recent incident that my daughter and I experienced where we live. Let's talk about responding in the moment. What are common warning signs and how can bystanders respond in a way that is trauma informed, safe for the survivor, and I think in today also safe for that bystander?
Mm-hmm. Great questions. So There's some there's some red flags that, maybe again, depending on the situation, if it's somebody that you're acquainted with or not acquainted with, you may or may not see. Obviously, people are going to notice the very physical things, hitting, punching, slapping. I'd be very conscious and keep my ear out for the name calling, degrading somebody, putting them down, because those um, emotional abuse and those triggers are often signs of something much greater going on. So whether you know somebody or you don't, if you're hearing that happening between a couple, I'd say stay tuned. Watch the body language. Sometimes you'll see people like they're already shirking. They know what's coming. I have seen abusers when they're in the midst of things. If somebody says something, hey, what's going on? Are you okay? They just say it loud enough so people in the vicinity hear. A lot of times they'll stop because they know that there are eyes on them. Again, when people are willing to put on the blinders and not be part of that community, not be part of that space, it gives power to abusers to continue because nobody's
Mhm.
challenging them. Nobody's saying, like, I'm watching you. I see what's going on over there. Hey, are you okay? Again, that question is so powerful. Just out loud. Hey, are you okay? Just shout it out
Mhm.
loud and see what happens and see how people will automatically just turn. Oh gosh, people are watching. I'm going to respond differently. Very powerful, very powerful. We know that there's some high lethality markers. So if somebody is pregnant and they are experiencing abuse, that is a high lethality indicator. If somebody has been strangled, you're 10 times more likely to be murdered if your abuser has strangled you. So be aware of what's happening. If maybe one of your friends is disclosing a situation and they don't think it's abuse, right? Like this is just, Johnny acting this way. So know what those signs look like. Um, know, do you feel comfortable calling 911 in the situation? I think some of these things, it's almost like safety planning ahead of time as a
Mhm.
bystander. And just thinking, like, what would I do if I saw something? Because, in the moment when there are these traumatic instances, you hear a lot about the fight, flight, freeze,
Mhm.
fawning, these four F's that exist. What is it like if you're a bystander and you witness something like this? So I often think of that. It's to like mentally prepare yourself. What am I going to do? What do I have around me? What are my resources? Who am I with? What does that situation look like? So really like safety planning as a bystander.
And I don't think that's ever a bad idea to have safety plans. The more you're talking, the more I'm just thinking in my head of things that you can do. And I will say, as a mom, I think it's also important that as parents, we do have safety plans when we go out with our kids. The world has
Mhm,
changed.
mhm.
And I think understanding how to keep others as well as ourselves safe is so important right now.
Yeah.
Um,
And
so go ahead.
I was just going to say from the mom aspect, I have boys and it's really important just on a family unit level the way that we think about modeling healthy conflict in our home. Uh what there are days I'm tired, I'm grumpy, things happen. But how do we model healthy conflict in the home? Where it's like, actually, today's not the day. Like, go talk to daddy, right? Like, mommy's tired. I can't do this. But how do we have those conversations? How do we talk about our feelings and express them in a healthy way? Yes, you're going to be angry. You're going to be sad. You're going to be frustrated. That doesn't mean that we're going to hit people when that happens. So I think from a bystander and like a personal responsibility, it starts with what our children see at home, what they experience, what's normalized for them. I want my kids to feel like being in a safe, loving household is normal. So when they see something that doesn't jive with those values, what we've talked about, that they think and they know instinctively that's not right. That person doesn't deserve that. That's not how you treat somebody. So I would love it if more people would just really think about how they are modeling healthy conflict at home. What does that look like? How do you have a disagreement with your spouse? My husband and I don't agree on everything. We don't have to, right? Like we can have different opinions and we can talk about that in a civil way in front of our children and we can bring them into the dialogue. But I think there has to be a level of personal responsibility along with this idea of community so we can continue to change. And the way that we model that in front of our kids is vitally important.
So I know I told you before I was going to stick to the script, but now you said something that makes me want to ask you a question that's off script.
Mhm.
So for a lot of us, we didn't grow up in a home where conflict was modeled in a healthy manner. What are resources to learn how to do that? Is that something that you could go to a therapist and have a therapist teach you? Is that, how do you learn how to model that when you didn't have that growing up?
Oh, that's a great question. Yes, I think one, I was really fortunate to have that in my house, and I feel really privileged to have my parents as that model. But there are so many incredible resources out there for parents, for kids, for teens. There's a really great website called Love is Respect for teens that talks about healthy relationships. They have so much incredible information, resources. It is so valuable on their website. So, that's a resource. Um, Boys Town National in Omaha, Nebraska.
I love
Um,
Boys Town.
yeah, so do I. I used to work there. But there were parent like helplines that you could call. Like as parents or like I need help. I need I need some guidance on like what to do with my teenager. There are resources, free resources that are available. I think there is so much out there that is a positive with the internet. There are so many helplines, so many websites. So I would really encourage people to look at Boys Town, to look at Love is Respect, to just Google and find something in your area because there are a lot of things that are available.
I will say in my house still, and I have an almost 22-year-old, we use the term big emotions. That's what
Mhm.
we've used since she was little. And it's funny, I've realized that's rolled off onto our dogs now. And we'll say, oh, they're having the big emotions right now.
Yeah.
But that's a positive way, naming it and
Yes.
moving forward.
Yeah.
Uh, So something that I think is important that we bring up here is community responsibility and that this isn't only a woman's issue. And I
Mhm.
would like to point out there are instances of elder abuse, children's abuse, child abuse, excuse me,
Mhm.
and also men being abused. There's a
Yes.
lot of abuse that happens. I think domestic violence is kind of an umbrella that a lot falls under.
Mhm.
So knowing that there are several groups, how can we become effective partners, messengers, funders, and policy advocates? And I know you said you reach out to your legislators. And one thing
Mhm.
I would like to say is we pay them. Don't be afraid to
Mhm.
reach out with
Yeah.
comments because we pay them. That's why I always tell people this is your tax dollars at work. Don't be
Yeah.
afraid to use them.
Yeah.
So how do we do all of this to reduce harm and increase safety? And how I think it takes a lot of courage. How do we remain courageous and hopeful in this space?
Oh, yeah, lots of good questions there. Uh, yes, women primarily or overwhelmingly are the victims of domestic violence, also called intimate partner violence. And I know, at least for us, sometimes our name can be a little off-putting for folks. Like, oh, you're going to your sister's house, or it's only for women. We serve anybody who is a victim of domestic violence. And I think you'll see that reflected in a lot of the language from other domestic violence agencies. It's not just a women's issue. October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and I think it's really important during this time when we have the spotlight to be able to talk about the issues. Sometimes you'll see statistics that like 1 in 4 men are the victims of, or sorry, 1 in 4 women, and sometimes you'll see 1 in 6 men. We get male victims. We had a men's only support group. We have a lot of men who come to us. And when I started going in the community saying, you know what, we're starting this men's only support group, at every community event I was at, there was at least one man who came up to me privately and said, this has happened to me. Again, the shame and stigma is even greater with
Mhm.
men because they shouldn't be
Right.
experiencing something like this. They absolutely do. The LGBTQ plus community
Yes.
being victimized at higher rates, Black women. So we know that marginalized communities oftentimes are experiencing domestic violence at higher rates. It's important, again, that we're getting the message out there, that we're talking about this, especially in the current environmental landscape. We reiterate that this is a safe space for everybody. So it doesn't matter how you identify. If you are affluent, you're less affluent, the color of your skin, your sexual orientation, at the end of the day, those things don't matter when it comes to domestic violence. It spans the board. We know that anybody and everybody, because we see them, can be a victim of domestic violence. And again, it is not our place to judge. It is our place to be here to provide the resources when somebody comes searching for help. So, just to be very clear, that if you're a domestic violence victim and you're in our service area, you're eligible. And I think it's really important that folks know that they continue to hear that message. If you're undocumented, for instance, also really important. If you're undocumented in this country and you're the victim of a crime, there's something called a U visa that you can apply for. Abusers aren't going to tell you that there's this legal remedy, right? There are a lot of avenues to applying for a U visa. Um, I understand how scary it is for a lot of victims who have these different issues that they're currently dealing with. But again, know that domestic violence agencies and rape crisis centers are still safe places. We maintain confidentiality, and our survivors' safety is number one.
Tasha, I want to thank you today. And I just want to reiterate domestic violence thrives in silence. Support starts with voices, with one steady, judgment free conversation. If you're listening and need help, or if you want to help, and I do want to say here, and this is my personal opinion as a former CEO of nonprofits, I understand that for some people volunteering with certain causes, they're not in the right mind space or they don't have the capabilities to do that. And that's okay. It takes money to do things. And so if you're not in the right headspace, but you can make a donation, that is just as meaningful as showing up. Reach out to your local services like My Sister's House, learn about the warning signs, respect survivor confidentiality, and remember that leaving is the most dangerous time. So safety planning matters. And remember that together we can make our communities safer and more compassionate. And I just want to stress compassionate and judgment free right now. I feel like those are words that we need to hear. And, I always think to myself, when you're in the store and you have the mom with a toddler who is screaming, don't judge because you don't know what she's been through that day or what that toddler's been through. And so what I try to remind myself as I get into my car, and this is, something you can do is, and I even say this to my dogs, instead of saying don't bark, I say we spread kindness because kindness manifests. And so I always remember, I don't know what you face today. So I'm going to do my darndest, my best to be kind. And if I feel like I can't be that way today for personal reasons, sometimes I don't go out, and it's okay. Get into a
Mhm.
good headspace. Don't judge. Spread kindness, spread a smile, spread joy. It all adds up.
Yeah.
And I, by no means am I trying to diminish on the importance of this conversation or the value that you've given us today, Tasha. I'm just pointers that I do one day at a time, right? One step at a time. And Tasha, thank you so much for your time today. If there's anything I can ever do, please don't ever hesitate to reach out. I will be one of your biggest advocates. What I would like to leave with saying is I recognize and appreciate the hard work that you and your teams do. And so on really hard days, if you just know there's somebody in this country who's giving you a high five, who's cheering you on, just let me be that cheerleader, especially on those hard days.
Thank you. That's really kind of you. And it matters because we talk a lot about vicarious trauma and how we take
Yes.
care of ourselves. And it's nice to have those reminders because you can easily get sucked into the vortex. But that little bit of kindness that you were talking about sharing and going out into the world makes all the difference. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, Tasha. I hope that you have a wonderful afternoon.
You too, Sarah. Thanks.
Thanks. Bye.